Hello, this is going to be a slightly different video again. This is sort of based on a video Dan Everett did. I know Dan Everett's a bit of a controversial figure because of his work with Piraha, but I think it's an interesting video, and that is the monolingual fieldwork demonstration that he did that's on YouTube somewhere, and I'll link it in the description. And this is a demonstration of how a field linguist goes to a place where they don't have a language in common with the people they're studying and gradually works out things about the language that they're studying and sort of builds up an understanding of that language effectively from scratch. And I would love to do this with someone at some point, but at the moment I can't find anybody who is sort of willing to do that. So I thought I'd do a fun little experiment, which is doing that but with Google Translate. Now, big massive disclaimer before I start this video: Google Translate is not a good way of learning languages. If you want to learn a language, you should learn it from people or from resources that people have, you know, deliberately designed to be language learning resources. Google Translate is for, you know, it's like a phrase book that you might use if you needed to say something. You know, it can be used for various things, but you shouldn't use it to translate large chunks of text, and you shouldn't use it to try and learn a language. This experiment is mostly just to see how much I can actually get out of it, just by testing hypotheses and things like that. And the language that I'm going to go with is Polish, because I think Polish is a large enough language that Google Translate has probably accumulated enough data to make a decent job of it. I may turn out to be wrong about that. And also, it's an Indo-European language, so it's not going to be too out there for me, having never done this before. And it's a language that I know speakers of, but I don't know very much about. So I have friends who are sort of bilingual English-Polish speakers. I have friends who are kind of heritage Polish speakers who aren't native Polish speakers, but they've heard it growing up and they speak a certain amount of it. And so I think it would be interesting to play around with that. Now, I'm not completely uninitiated. I know a certain amount about Polish. So I know, for example, that it has nasal vowels, although the exact realization I've never tried to transcribe before. Well, I clearly have 10 minutes before recording this video because I've done it here. I know that I know that word final voiced plosives have become devoiced in the relatively recent past, which is why this word, which is spelt with a B at the end, is pronounced with a P. And I'll tell you what else I know about it as I go along, because I can't think off the top of my head what I know about it. I know very few words of Polish, but I thought the one that I would start playing around with is dąb, which means oak tree, I believe. And I learnt this from Norbert from Ecolinguist, when I was using the word ark, the Old English word for oak, and I asked him what the word for oak was in Polish, and he says dąb. And there's a Polish beer that me and a friend sometimes drink, which is called something like dębowy, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that has a picture of an oak tree on the front as well. So let's start playing around. So oak,
Dąb. Dąb.
dąb. So I think that's d, and then a nasalized version of this vowel, and then p. Now, the nasalized version of this vowel sounds like it kind of has a m at the end of it. That could just be due to a combination of the kind of lips closing to pronounce the p, and the nasal vowel still kind of being articulated, so that might not be a phonemic thing, but that's how it comes out. Now, let's experiment with articles. So that is oak. What is the oak? The oak still seems to just be dąb.
Dąb.
What about an oak?
Dąb.
That's still just dąb. And this is one thing that I kind of knew about Polish, is that it doesn't have articles. There's no way of saying the or a in the same way as we might in English. Hang on, I'll just note down. So you don't have to say the, you don't have to say a or an. What if you wanted to make it the plural of oak? Oaks.
Dęby.
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 Dęby. So here, the vowel seems to change and become kind of fronted, and the fronted vowel seems to be at about the same tongue height as the original back vowel that's in the word domp. So O and E have the tongue at about the same height. If you looked at an IPA vowel quadrilateral, the tongue would be at about the same height for both those qualities. So the word
Dęby.
dęby. So the same thing happens with the nasal vowel. As the lips close, you kind of get this m articulation. I've seen that vowel transcribed as the I with the cross through it, so that's how I'm going to do it here. This means that the first syllable is stressed, dęby, dęby, rather than dęby, dęby. So an interesting thing here is that earlier I was talking about how in the recent past word final voiceless plosives seem to have been devoiced in Polish, which is why you have this p, despite the fact that domp is spelt with a b. And in this inflected version of the word, you can see more evidence for that, which is that now that it's not word final, it's pronounced as b again. So clearly at some point in the recent past you had something like dąb and dęby, and then in the more recent past word final plosives have become devoiced, and that's why you now have domp and dęby, but these are both spelled with b. So dęby means oaks rather than just oak. So to pluralize this word, you front the vowel, you add this I ending, and because of this sound change that seems to have happened, you also voice the b. Right. What if I wanted to say in the oak?
W dębie. W dębie.
W dębie. W dębie. W dębie. So
W dębie.
I would call this word two syllables. W dębie. W dębie. My pronunciation's obviously not going to be fantastic. I just want to keep these M's large enough that they're visible. I'm doing them superscript because I'm not sure if they're actually... I don't think they're phonemic, I think they're just part of the nasal vowel. So, w dębie means in the oak. Now, we already know that Polish doesn't use articles in the same way as English does, so there's no word for the. So, presumably, v is a preposition that in this case means the same thing as in English. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that every time you'd use in English, you'd use v in Polish, because prepositions are kind of fuzzy between languages and they don't necessarily map onto each other fantastically. But the word, again, the vowel has been fronted, so rather than being domp, it's dębie. This ye ending has been added, which I assume is a dative ending, because we're using the preposition that would be in English, and that normally triggers the dative in Indo-European languages that I'm familiar with. And again, we have this voicing of the b, because it's not word final as it is in domp. So maybe we'll make a little note here, like, oh, didn't mean to do that. Dative ending equals yeah. Let's try something else. What about into the oak?
W dąb. W dąb.
W dąb. W dąb. So here we have this word that seems to mean in, and also just the word dąb, as if it were uninflected. Now in German and in Old English, when you're saying in something, the noun takes the dative, as this noun seems to be doing in Polish. But when you're saying into something, the noun takes the accusative. But you still just use the same preposition in. So that seems to be what's happening here in Polish as well. The same preposition is used for in and into, and the way you distinguish between them is by inflecting the noun differently. So in the dative it seems to be dębie, and in the maybe the accusative is dąb. So it's my hypothesis here is that dąb is both the nominative and accusative form of this word in Polish. So I'm noting that the in-into distinction triggers the dative / the accusative in the same way as it does in German and Old English. So let's test our hypothesis that dąb is both the nominative and the accusative form of this word. And to clarify for anyone who doesn't know the difference between nominative and accusative, which is fair enough because I didn't until not a huge, until I was an adult I didn't know the difference. Dąb in the nominative would be the oak tree is doing the verb, whereas in the accusative it would be it's having the verb done to it. So let's take the sentence, the cat climbs the oak. In that situation, oak would be in the accusative because the oak tree is having the act of climbing done to it. Whereas if it was like the oak falls on the ground, then in that case the oak is nominative because it's doing the action of falling. So I would suggest that in both of those cases you just have the form dąb in Polish. So let's test this by saying a kind of grammatically sound but otherwise kind of nonsense sentence. The oak kills the oak. That sentence is grammatically acceptable, but obviously it doesn't, you'd never say it because that's not something that would happen.
Dąb zabija dąb.
Dąb zabija dąb. So presumably zabija means killed, kills. And indeed, as predicted, dąb, dąb, the nominative and accusative forms of this word dąb seem to be identical to each other. So let's note this down. Dąb is the nominative singular. Dąb is the nominative, is the accusative singular. Now let's play around with what the nominative and accusative plurals are. The oaks kill the oaks.
Dęby zabijają dęby.
Dęby, dęby zabijają dęby. So we're using this word, oaks, again. Let's make that 15 so it's nice and small. And dęby seems to also be the accusative plural, which makes me wonder whether Polish distinguishes between the nominative and accusative. I don't know whether it does or doesn't. Now I'm interested in this word kill and how that changes. So let's stick to oak for now. Let's continue playing around with the word oak. What if we were to say, let's introduce a new word like cat. The cat is in the oak. I predict that will be pronounced kot jest w dębie.
Kot jest w dębie.
Okay, that wasn't too hard to work out. So cat seems to kind of resemble the word in English, which isn't too surprising because English and Polish are both Indo-European, and there's, you know, these the word order seems to be the same as it would be in English. So kot, dębie, we know what these words mean, and cat is in oak seems to be the word order here. So that's the same word order as in English: subject, verb, object. So the dative singular is dębie, as we've worked out. What if the cat was in the oaks, plural?
Kot jest w dębach.
Dębach,
Kot jest w dębach.
bach. I would transcribe that as dębach. Dębach seems to be dative plural. Now, what if we were to try and produce genitive forms? So, the oaks branch, so the genitive is what the possessive evolved from in English. So the oaks branch, you know, the branch belonging to the oak. So in this case, we know that the doesn't seem to exist in Polish. There doesn't seem to be a definite article. Presumably this is the part that means oak, because we've got this dęb kind of thing. And this presumably means sort of the branch in the nominative, I think that would be. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Now, another thing I happen to know about Polish is that this L with a cross through it is pronounced like W in standard Polish, and I think that comes from an earlier L being vocalized, which is very common across languages. It's happening in my accent in English at the moment, so fell is kind of becoming fell. So that seems to have happened in Polish. So I think this is going to be, I've never seen this word before, but I think it's going to be pronounced something like gałązka.
Gałązka dębu.
Okay, gałązka. Gałązka. So the nominative singular of oak seems to be dębu. Dębu. So again we have this fronted vowel, which contrasts with the on in the nominative accusative singular forms. So dębu is the genitive singular. I don't know if the words like dative and genitive are applicable to Polish. This might be a case that I'm not familiar with. We'll just do this, and we'll go the oaks branches, the branches of the oaks. So we're now looking at the genitive plural, the branches belonging to multiple oaks.
Gałęzie dębów.
Dębów, dębów.
Gałęzie dębów.
Okay, so this word dębów, it seems to be the same dem and then u, and then although this is spelt with a W, which is normally pronounced v in Polish, I think that it's devoiced here if you listen.
Gałęzie dębów.
I don't think he's saying dębów, I think he's saying dębów.
Gałęzie dębów.
So that fits with what we know about word final sounds becoming devoiced. So that is the genitive plural, if genitive is the right word. So our nominative singular and accusative singular are both dąb. The nominative plural and the accusative plural are both dębie, dębie. The dative singular is dębie. The dative plural is dębach. The genitive singular is dębu, and the genitive plural is dębów. Nominative, accusative, dative and genitive are the cases that exist in modern German. Old English had those four, and it also had the instrumental, but that was kind of dying out during the period that Old English was being written down. So Polish might have more cases that I don't know about. So I'm going to play around with different prepositions through the oak.
Przez dom. Przez dom. Przez dom.
Przez dom. So that seems to be taking the nominative or accusative, or possibly a different case that I don't know about.
Z dębu. Z dębu.
So zdębu seems to take the genitive, because we're getting this dębu form.
Poza dębem. Poza dębem.
That's interesting. So when you go outside the oak, we get this form dębem, which we haven't had yet.
Poza dębem.
Poza dębem.
Poza dębem.
What's that vowel?
Poza dębem.
So shove that there, outside the oak. So that takes a different form. So that's presumably a different case which doesn't exist in the languages that I know anything about. What about if it was outside the oaks?
Poza dębami.
Oh, that's interesting.
Poza dębami.
So not only do we now have a new form for the plural of this case that we've just found, but also the emphasis, the stress in the word has changed. It's now jumped onto the second syllable. Instead of being dębami, we're now getting dębami. Dębami. I'm trying to pronounce this as well as I can, but I'm probably not doing a great job. So oh no. Oh no, I've I've put this in the superscript bit with the N. Hang on. So copy, paste, and then we can take this dębami form and put it as the plural of this weird case that we found. That doesn't look like an instrumental case, but I'm so unfamiliar with cases outside of the ones that are in Old English and German that I really couldn't tell you what that case might be called. So why do we have this jump in stress? Well, it seems as though this may be something to do with syllables, because dębami has 3 syllables, whereas none of these have more than 2. And this kind of cements in my mind the idea that this is dębie rather than dębie. So that all of these seem to have either 1 or 2 syllables. Dębami has 3 syllables, and that's where we get the change in stress. So maybe there's some rule that stress falls on penultimate syllable in certain contexts, because in a word with 1 syllable it can only fall on the 1 syllable. In a word with 2 syllables it's falling on the one before the last one, which happens to be the first one. But in a word with 3 syllables it's still falling on the one before the last one, the middle syllable. It's just in this case, because the word has 3 syllables, that penultimate syllable is not the first syllable. So okay. So now that we've found a few cases, and there might be more cases, let's play around with a different word, like cat.
Kot.
Cat is cot.
Kot. Kot. Kot.
I think there's a little bit of aspiration of the word initial plosive. I could be wrong, but I think whereas in Spanish, where you'd have an unaspirated plosive, got, in English you'd have a much more aspirated one, cot. It sounds like there's a bit of aspiration there.
Kot. Kot.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I'll not transcribe that because I don't know if it's contrastive. Actually, maybe I will. Yeah, hang on. No, I won't. I won't bother transcribing that. So, cot means cat. Let's just check that the article thing still applies. So the cat is the same thing. A cat is the same thing, so still no articles. Cat is, I'm going to predict that's pronounced koty.
Koty.
Okay. Koty. Okay, so this seems to be vaguely following the oak pattern. So even though in cat the vowel doesn't alternate with a fronted version of itself, it just remains the same, kot, koty, it still takes this ending, I, which I'm not very good at pronouncing, that IPA character. Polish people can tell me I'm pronouncing it wrong. But yeah, kot, koty. So this starts to allow us to make predictions about other words and how they might pluralize things. So, let's think. The cat kills the cat.
Kot zabija kota.
Kot zabija kota. So, here, we do have a difference between the nominative and accusative. So, hang on a second, 15. So, kot, kota. So, whereas with domp, the nominative singular and accusative singular were identical, with kot, you've got two different forms for the nominative versus accusative singular. Let's have a look at if you pluralize them. The cats kill the cats.
Koty zabijają koty.
That middle word,
Koty zabijają koty.
zabijają. Zabijają.
Koty zabijają koty.
Zabijają. Okay, so this is the nasal A, and this is suggesting to me that maybe this m here may indeed just be the lips closing to pronounce the p, and may just be kind of an allophonic thing, because that doesn't happen here. It doesn't seem to be zabijają, it's zabijają.
Koty zabijają koty.
But anyway, the nominative and accusative plurals are both koty. What about in the cat?
W kotu.
W kotu. So, kotu is the dative singular. In the cats.
W kotach.
Kotach.
W kotach.
It's interesting that the word in v seems to devoice in this one.
W kotach.
It goes to f instead of v. Let's get the genitive.
Jedzenie dla kota.
No, okay. That's confusing me.
Zęby kota. Zęby kota.
So zęby is clearly teeth. Kota is the cat is cat in the genitive. And interestingly, if you look at zęby, you find that it really looks quite a lot like dęby. So I wonder if the singular of tooth is ząb. We'll test that in a minute. It probably isn't. So kota is no. Yeah, okay. So the genitive is just the same as the accusative singular. And then we'll change where the apostrophe is in English.
Zęby kotów.
Kotów. Again, the exact same thing. This, what would presumably at one time in history be v, devoices at the end of a word, and you get kotów. So that's the genitive. And what's this? I've forgotten what we did here. So outside, we use the word outside as our prototypical word to trigger this this other case. First, I'm going to check whether tooth is ząb. Ah!
Ząb.
I promise you, I did not. I'm actually surprised that that's.
Ząb.
I promise you that that was not. I genuinely didn't know that before. I would be honest with you and tell you if I'd looked at it before, but I genuinely didn't. Okay, so we'll note that down at the bottom here. The reason I'm copy and pasting segments of text is just so that I can keep the sizes consistent. But yeah, so ząb. I'm going to stop transcribing an M here because I think that's just I think that's just an allophonic thing. So I'm going to remove it from all the other ones here because it's just kind of not necessary to have it in. It just seems to be a nasal vowel where the m happens to just appear when there's a labial. No, the labial articulation seems to appear where there's a labial consonant afterwards. So we don't need to transcribe that. So ząb is tooth, zęby is teeth, so that's another example of this vowel alternation. So maybe that's something that happens before labial sounds. A labial sound being a sound made with the lips, so b, m, w. I don't know. It depends. We'd have to test that more, which we probably won't get around to. But ząb, zęby, zęby. So, what about this weird case that we've found outside the cat?
Na zewnątrz kota.
Okay, I suspect that Google Translate is not using the case here, but is using some other construction, so we might not be able to find. Okay, so poza is outside in this case, so this seems to be right. And the form of cat looks like it correlates with the form of oak in this case, so dębami, kotami, kotami.
Poza kotami.
Kotami. So it does the same three-syllable thing where the stress jumps to the middle syllable. And again in IPA, this little kind of apostrophe thing here tells you where the stress is, so it occurs before the stress syllable. So ami, hang on, actually that ought to go there. Kotami, that is the plural of this case that we don't really know about. So what would we predict was the singular of that? Well, I suppose kotem. So let's see what happens if we turn this the other way and say poza kotem. Okay, we get outside the cat. So even though Google Translate seems to want to use a different construction here, and it doesn't want to give us this singular form of this case that we've found. Is there any way of making it? No, there's not. But it seems as if kotem is the form here, and a Polish speaker can correct me if I'm wrong. We'll just nab this from here. Right, so what do we now have? We've kind of, I'm going to copy and paste this down here so that we can see it more easily. We've kind of built up some kind of idea of how the cases work with their endings. So no ending for the nominative singular, possibly an a ending for the accusative singular, or possibly no ending, I for the nominative plural, and possibly vowel alternation, I for the accusative plural. For the dative singular, there is a difference between cat, which takes u, and oak, which takes ye. For the dative plural, they're both the same, it's ach. For the genitive singular, it's different, one takes u, one takes a. For the genitive plural, it's the same, they both take uf. For the case that we don't know the name of, they are identical. Well, this is hypothesized, I've made that up, so I'm going to put an asterisk next to it. But otherwise it seems to be ami, sorry. So there seems to be a phonemic difference between I at the end of a word and I at the end of a word. So this isn't koti, it's koti. Again, I'm probably not pronouncing that right. So these are largely similar to each other. The key differences are the accusative singular, one of them takes a, the other doesn't. The dative singular, one of them takes u and one of them takes ye. And the genitive singular, where one of them takes a and one of them takes u. My hypothesis here is that there are two grammatical genders at play, at least. Cat takes, I would suggest, the feminine gender, and the reason I would suggest that is because of this a, which in Indo-European languages is very often, oh hang on, no. Yeah, I was going to suggest this is feminine because in Indo-European languages a is often feminine, and something like us or us, or you know, something with a, I suppose those vowels don't have a lot in common. I suppose they're kind of back vowels. Yeah, that's, ignore what I've just said. This is nonsense. I don't think there's any reason to. Yeah, I'm gonna pin my hopes on that being feminine and then oak being maybe masculine or neuter. And so that's why we have these different paradigms. Sorry for that clearing of throat. Let's make up another word. Wall.
ściana, 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 ściana.
So, ściana. How does he say that? Where's sh? That's here, so sh. Chana.
Ściana,
There seems to be a slight kind of palatalization of that. Ściana seems to be wall. So how are we expecting this to change when we change the cases?
ściany,
Ściany. So that does the normal thing of taking I at the end of the nominative plural. So can we make up the forms in the other cases? So if it has a at the end in the nominative singular, maybe it's feminine. We don't know that for sure, but maybe it's feminine. So that can inform us about what it might take, for example, in the dative singular. Would it be ścianu? Or alternatively, would it be ścianie? I think I'm predicting ścianu. So
w ścianie,
okay, I was wrong. It's ścianie, but that is one of the things I suggested. Sorry, ścianie. Ścianie. So that means that maybe that actually fits into this inflection paradigm, and we should be using this to inform our predictions about it. So what's another thing that's different between the two inflection paradigms? The genitive singular in this one is u, and in this one it's a. So we would expect the genitive singular of this to be u. So
farba ścienna,
farba ścienna.
farba ścienna, farba ścienna.
Okay, so paint is presumably farba. And I was wrong about this. This is not u, it's a. So the two paradigms are kind of getting mixed up a little bit here. But not only that, there's an interesting phonological thing here where you get this double N in spelling, and then that's pronounced
Farba ścienna.
ścienna. Normally I'd say that was genitive, but a Polish speaker that I know has pointed out that in some cases, sorry, I've completely mangled that. Normally I would say this was a geminate consonant, a consonant that's held for twice as long as a normal consonant. So rather than ściena, it's ścienna. But in this case, it's a weird situation because, yeah, this Polish speaker that I know has said that sometimes consonants are articulated and then articulated again. So that if you said this really slowly, it wouldn't be ścienna, it would be ścienna. And you can kind of hear that when he says it slowly.
Farba ścienna. Farba ścienna.
Ścienna. So ścienna. So maybe we put a little schwa there. and then that's farba. Okay, so we now have, hang on, have I done that right? Okay, so we have, the genitive has this vowel alternation where a becomes e, which is interesting because they're not the same tongue height. One of those is lower than the other. And it also has not just a added to the end, as in this inflection paradigm, but it has na added to the end. So that is interesting. So maybe this is another inflection paradigm that we haven't discovered yet. Now there's only so much I can do with this, so let me look at how long I've been recording. I've been recording for 46 minutes, so I'm going to wrap it up there, and if anyone is remotely interested in me doing this again, I will do at some point. But I'm not going to make a regular thing of this because it's quite different to what I normally do. I'm planning on doing some interesting stuff. I'm hoping to do some stuff with American accents coming up, although it's taking some time to kind of eke out research that's not gonna, that's not outdated and isn't going to cause me to say things that aren't true anymore or aren't agreed with anymore. So that's why that's taking a little while. But aside from that, let's see what predictions we can make. I think Polish has at least 2 or 3 genders. I think that there are at least 5 cases, including this outside one that we've come up with. I think, in terms of phonemes, what can we say in terms of phonemes? I think that the difference between voiced and voiceless phonemes is phonemic, because you do get voiceless phonemes in other places in the word, like at the start. So I think there is a phonemic difference between voiceless and voiced phonemes. So another way of looking at this is, I think that some phonemes of Polish are th. I'm just going up looking at this. The, p, b, t. Do we have a d? We have a d, so d. I think that y is a phoneme, although it could be analysed as just how e is realised when it comes before a vowel or something like that. I think it has a n phoneme because you get alternation between situations where there's just a nasal vowel and then situations where there's a vowel nasal sequence. So I think there's a n phoneme. I think it has nasal vowel phonemes, although I'm not sure if there are hang on, okay, I do think there are phonemic nasal distinctions, because I think between the e in Zambia, or Zembi, and the e at the end of Szczanie, I think there is, the only difference between those is the fact that one is nasal and one isn't. So I think it has an e phoneme that is not nasal, which contrasts phonemically with an e phoneme that is nasal. I similarly think that it has an o phoneme that's not nasal, which contrasts with an on phoneme that is nasal. What else do I think? I think it has an A phoneme, and I haven't come across a nasal version of that, so I'm not going to say that that exists. There seems to be rather than in certain positions. Where have I found that? Or have I just made that up? No, maybe I've just made that up. I wonder if maybe I'm transcribing this weirdly. Maybe the O in poza is the same as the O in kot. Hang on.
Poza. Kot.
Yeah, I think these are the same sound, so I think I've just been inconsistent in my transcription here. So yeah, I think that's the same sound. There's clearly an I phoneme, which at the end of a word contrasts with an I phoneme. So I and I seem to be separate phonemes. Actually, if I just make this more there, yeah. And there seems to be a sh phoneme and a ch affricate. So sh, ch. I'll put those in with the consonants. I haven't found any, well, so bear in mind we've used a very small sample size. Oh no, we have. I was going to say we haven't found examples of m that isn't a nasal, the result of a nasal vowel articulation, but there are examples here. So I think there's a m sound. And I think there's also a r phoneme, like the alveolar tap, farba. Okay. Are we happy with this? I think there are probably more phonemes than this that we just haven't come across. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look up Polish. Then I'm going to look up grammar. Relatively free word order. The dominant arrangement is subject, verb, object. That's something I said earlier, I think. No articles. Okay, nouns belong to one of three genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter. Oh, and the masculine gender is divided into subgenders, animate versus inanimate. Okay, so I was right about the 2 or 3 genders thing, although I probably wouldn't have been able to get the animate versus inanimate thing unless I'd really gone for it for hours and hours. Now, how many cases are there? Right, let's see. Polish grammar. Okay, there is a nominative, accusative, vocative, locative, dative, genitive, and instrumental. So that's 7 cases. I knew Lithuanian, which is also Balto-Slavic, had lots of cases. I didn't realise Polish had this many, although I had been told that it had a few cases. So we know there's a nominative, an accusative, a dative, and a genitive. So this other case that we've discovered is either vocative, locative, or instrumental. I don't think it's instrumental. I think I maybe said that earlier. Although, actually, no, it is instrumental, isn't it? Yeah, because when you look at the paradigm that we found, it's M and AMI, and that's exactly what it is in the instrumental. So I was completely wrong about that. That does seem to be the instrumental case. Maybe I was wrong about what I thought the instrumental case was. It comes up so infrequently in Old English that I may have just completely misunderstood what it was. So we seem to have found the instrumental case there, but we missed out the vocative and the locative. Yeah, okay, that's all right. And what else? The phonemes. So Polish phonology. The vowels that we have, here are our vowels. The vowels we predicted were e, o, on, a, I, and I. Okay. So the vowels it lists are E, something that I suppose is probably our I. Okay, it says something else here. 6 oral vowels, which are E, that's right, I, that's right, E, that's right, A, we got that, O, we got that, and U, we didn't get that, although it does appear somewhere, I think. I'm sure we got it somewhere, yeah, U and Uf. Now this suggests that this U and this U are the same phoneme, which I completely believe. So I've transcribed them differently, but I believe that they're the same phoneme. That makes sense. The nasal vowels are eh, which we got, and on, spelled like that, which we also got. So we seem to have actually come across all of the vowels, although I missed out U when I was writing them down. Fantastic. What about the consonants? We have found, right, is F one of them? Yep. Is V one of them? Yep. Is P, B? We have those. T, D. We have those. Y, is that a phoneme? Yes, it is a phoneme. N, M. We have those. R, we have that. Now bear in mind, Wikipedia's analysis of the phonology doesn't necessarily correlate with every linguist's analysis of the phonology. Wikipedia tends to be better for this sort of thing than you might expect it to be, but also other phonologists may disagree with this analysis. Now sh, as I transcribed it, it doesn't seem to have, but it has s, and then it has a retroflex, which I think is like kind of s. I'm not very good at retroflex fricatives. And then it has this sound, which I think is probably the one I've transcribed in this way, because I can't tell the difference between this and sh. Let's listen to this.
Sha, a sha.
Yes, so that seems to be what I have transcribed as sh, whereas in reality it's alveolo-palatal, so that's like sha, a sha, I don't know. We have this ch, which I forgot to transcribe, but it's up here somewhere, Dembach. And then this ch, I think, is actually just this, and I've transcribed it wrong. So Polish makes contrasts which I can't necessarily hear very well. But all in all, we seem to have done pretty well. Yeah, that was hopefully that was at least semi-interesting and not just boring. I feel like it's so long that it's just the kind of video that you just sit and listen to passively. But yeah, hopefully any Polish people that watch this can tell me how good or bad my pronunciation was, and criticize me on aspects of the phonology and the case system that I've got wrong. And hopefully somebody at some point I'll find somebody that's willing to do this kind of thing in person, because I think that would be really interesting, although I think that would make an even longer video. Thank you very much for putting up with this one, and I will talk to you soon.